Hello, hello. Hi. Kat, just really quick, did you want to hop to the customer first one, by the way? I can still move you. Otherwise, you can stick to this one. Yeah.
I'm happy to be here.
Okay.
But yeah, maybe next time it'll be interesting to get different perspectives.
Fantastic. Yeah,
Awesome.
definitely. Amazing. So,
Kate, who's my colleague, we do the same job, so she might have the same interest, but I'm not quite sure. I have to chat to
okay.
her directly.
Amazing. And yeah, so basically, I'm just letting some folks in. We have a pretty full house, hopefully, today. So we'll see how that goes. And yeah, thank you so much for coming to manage your book club for RSVPing. You're part of a very selected group, which I will let you know in just a second. And as per usual, I would love to start with a quick little kind of icebreaker while we're letting some folks in. So if you aren't familiar with Kona, we do these little green, yellow, red check-ins. We're also a manager co-pilot helping a lot out with kind of empathetic leadership. So if green is great, yellow okay, and red terrible, either use the reactions portion or the chat to just share how you're feeling today. So how are you feeling today? I'm personally probably a little bit of a lime. Running these sessions, I have a bagel that's like on my desk, but it's kind of getting cold instead of actually the toasty that it was a few minutes ago. So I'm getting a few yellows. If you like, Kat, if you want to share, like, why are you yellow today? Yeah.
Yeah, very happy to. I'm based in South Africa, and we have a heck of a lot of public holidays over the month of May and April. So we have just kind of like 4 consecutive 4-day weeks for a whole month, which means not as many working hours and just as much work. So just feeling like my workload's quite a lot at the moment, but that's all. Otherwise, very happy to be here.
A lot of sense. Thank you so much for your vulnerability and for sharing. I see a few other yellows. If somebody's green, do you want to share why you're green today? Love to hear it.
I'll share. I just want to say, living the dream, just super happy. Workload is a bit much, but it's challenging me, and I have a vacation coming up, so it's all good.
Amazing. Where are you going for vacay?
This time Miami.
Okay, that is beautiful, and the weather is going to be fantastic. So, yeah, please enjoy. That sounds fantastic. And then, Erin, I saw you're a little lime today. Any idea why you might be lime?
Yeah, definitely. So just feeling a bit tired in general today. Pretty rough night of sleep. I love my 8 hours. If I don't get it, I'm a disaster. But I'm still green because we're halfway through the week, and I too am taking a small vacation this weekend, and I'm going to New York City. So I'm just excited to spend some time with some friends.
The Big Apple. That is fantastic. I also have like a little road trip planned to go see the super blooms in California. There's like giant flower fields that are open that I'm really excited to see with my partner. So that'll be really exciting. We're still waiting for a few names to kind of hop in and stuff. So if you just entered for some reason, we're just doing a quick little icebreaker of how we're feeling. Tarana, you're checked in yellow. Any idea why you're yellow today?
Yeah, I would say yellow, based on just kind of dealing with some difficult work situations, some kind of, difficult employee situations currently. So just kind of in the midst of figuring that all out in a way that is helpful to everyone. So always a new challenge and everything. Obviously good to be challenged, but hate when it's about, our people. So yeah, that's it for me.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear, and thank you for sharing. I'm sure a lot of folks can resonate or have definitely been in your shoes at one point of time. So, yeah. All right, we can get started. There might be some other folks trickling in, but essentially, this is what I just sent into the chat, the club member directory. So you can hop in there, go over to the HR People Ops group that we're in right now, and you can see some of the other faces, get oriented with who else is in the room. We're going to be doing a lot of discussions today, so you'll get to know these folks and hopefully share problems, share ideas and insights as we discuss Radical Candor by Kim Scott. So let's dive in. This section is about part one. It's about 110 pages into the book, and it's where Kim goes over a lot of the basics around performance management, giving feedback, and managing teams, essentially. For the overall structure, before we dive in, I should probably introduce myself. My name is Yen. I'm co-founder of Kona. We're the manager, co-pilot, and employee well-being platform for remote teams. And we really study a lot of management best practices, and we're trying to support managers any way we can. I also want to invite my lovely co-host to introduce herself, Monica.
Hello, everybody. My name is Monica. I am first marketer at Kona. And similarly to Yen, I'm obsessed with books. I read about 100 books every year. And we're just so excited to be here to talk about books and management, my two biggest passions in life. So it's great to see them combined today.
Yeah, if you ever add Monica on Goodreads, it's very impressive and semi-intimidating, but yeah, she is a huge reader. And as you can see by my bookshelf behind me, we're both English majors that just so happened to grow up, and we didn't want to leave the books behind. So as you know, we're discussing part one, and overall, we're going to be going over a lot of discussions. This predominantly will be highly participatory, so I just ask that folks raise their hand if they do want to say something. That avoids a lot of the Zoom chaos that tends to happen. We also have a few discussion rules because this topic can get a little bit more sensitive. It's feedback, and often that requires a level of psychological safety, also requires a lot of courage to share that you're struggling with something with a bunch of strangers. So I ask that everybody follow these discussion rules. Number one, assume positive intent. We are operating in completely virtual spaces with folks from around the world. So just assume positive intent. I really doubt anybody has malicious intent in the room. Number two, create a safe space for others. And so just making sure that you give other folks a chance to speak if you notice that they haven't had as much airtime, and allowing for folks to get that positive encouragement. It goes a really long way. And the third, I just ask that we acknowledge, validate, and create a space for diverse perspectives. We have folks from all sorts of different walks of life, different company sizes and industries. And so it'd be really awesome to get all these different perspectives. I think we can get a lot of value by being together in this room. All of you, predominantly, most of you work in HR or people ops as well. And so leaning into that expertise, I think there's a lot of similarities and hopefully resonance that we can bring out of this conversation. So today's agenda, you just heard the introduction. We're going to go through part one, review each of the different chapters, and kind of go through a little micro discussion with about 2 or 3 folks sharing and discussing active questions from each chapter, just to go over some key topics. Next, we're going to dive into a feedback workshop. And so folks will be able to go through, and you'll actually be able to practice one-on-one praise and criticism, delivering both with different types of scenarios. And finally, we're going to do some sort of leader roundtable. This last section is basically intent for you to raise problems, things that you're dealing with, different questions or places of advice. You could ask about the book or just plain about what's going on, and hopefully other folks in the room can offer you some advice in the process. And finally, we'll walk you through the Manager Book Club Hub if you haven't seen it already, to walk you through some perks, resources, and freebies that Kim Scott's team has graciously offered us. So if you're ready, let's dive right in. Number one, part one's review and summary. And in the very beginning of the book, we get this lovely quote from Kim stating the intention of part one. Part one is designed to set your mind at ease. Being a good boss is hard for everyone, no matter how successful they appear on the outside. Very humbling statement, and something that I think a lot of managers and leaders know all too well. And it's great to know that this is kind of the intent of part one. In the intro, we get the story of Bob, and Kim states, the impact of my behavior with Bob didn't stop with him. Others on the team wondered why I accepted such poor work. So if you're familiar from reading the introduction, you met Bob. Bob was an excellent, really charismatic person. He was somebody that the entire office loved, but when it came to work, he was a little bit lacking. His performance was often shabby, and oftentimes it took him a whole month to complete a spreadsheet. And when it actually came to it, when Bob was fired, he asked this key question: why didn't you tell me? Why didn't anybody tell me what was going on? He didn't receive any feedback, and so he was blindsided by the fact that his employment was terminated. I think it's something a lot of folks can relate to. And so I want to raise the first question. Have you ever managed a Bob or experienced a similar situation as the Bob kind of story? Was there any Bobs in your life? Anybody want to kind of raise their hand and share? No, it could be really scary to break the ice and stuff because we're still getting to know each other. Oh, thanks so much, Trent. Go ahead.
Hi, yeah, I had this happen 3 days ago, actually. 3 days ago, so it's very relevant. I'm a people business partner and I was partnering with the director, and we had to give some hard news to an individual that we'll just call John. And John, I had known him. He was my friend. I had known him for years. The nicest guy you've ever met in your entire life. And we gave him notice that he was losing his position. And in that meeting, he asked exactly what Bob asked. Why didn't anyone tell me? And that, I mean, that just broke me. And I've seen this many, many times. And I think it's a perfect example of challenging directly and having those conversations. And unfortunately, in this case, it was another Bob situation with John, who was an excellent guy, but didn't get the feedback. And that was our disservice. That was myself and the director failing him.
Why do you think why do you think the feedback never came up, I guess? And why do you think the situation happens?
I think it's hard. I think it's hard to challenge directly. And when he was such a nice guy, I would coach the director and say, have we documented, have we raised concerns, have we set expectation, and where he's not meeting those expectations, he would say yes. And I think it's an opportunity for better training for myself as an advisor, and then better training for the manager in terms of don't sandwich the feedback. Because what he did was, first he said, thanks for all your hard work. And then he brought up the concerns. And what John said in the meeting was, I don't understand how this is happening when 2 weeks ago, we just had a conversation where you thanked me and the client thanked me for my work. So he was receiving mixed messages and it was sandwiched. And I think I know I do it. And I know I've seen a lot of other leaders do it as well, because it's hard to just go right into it and challenge directly and have that be the only thing you talk about in that conversation. And we didn't do that, and it led to confusion, and rightfully so.
Yeah, really appreciate you for having the bravery to share and for sharing a really great, relevant example. I think it's something that a lot of us can relate to. I think that's why the Bob story is so powerful, and it really explains why feedback is so hard and why we have a whole book that we're discussing about it. I'm going to go into the next session. There's a lot of other questions and stuff. But yeah, really excited to see stuff going on in the chat as well. So chapter 1, we go into the emotional labor of caring personally and challenging directly. Kim directly says, we undervalue the emotional labor of being the boss. This emotional labor is not just part of the job, it's the key part of being a boss. And this is where we get that anecdote. Kim walks in, somebody's celebrating a win that their kid had, another person's really dismayed over a health condition. And Kim is like going to her coach and she's like, what is this? What am I, a therapist? And I'm sure a lot of the HR VPs, the people ops folks in the room, I'm sure you feel this all too well, the kind of therapist aspect of having to kind of service your teammates and stuff can be really challenging. When we go higher level, Kim also explains the different kind of roles. Your job as a manager is to drive results, grow your teammates, and build a safe culture. And you do this by caring personally and challenging directly, that thing that Trent has just awesomely mentioned. And so when we talk about caring personally, what are some ways that you care personally for teammates at work? I'd love like a few examples. If you want to raise your hand, that'd be fantastic. Yeah, Tatiana, please.
So one of the things that I do, because I am not a person with a very good memory, is actually add a lot of notes to my calendar from follow-up and conversations I have with folks. So as an example, a colleague of mine was going to have lunch with me tomorrow, and she said, my partner needs a surgery and I'll be there with them. So can we reschedule? And so I added a note tomorrow to remember to ask how the surgery went. Obviously, that's top of mind and it's next day, but sometimes people will tell me they'll go on vacation in a week or whatever the case might be. And I know that adding those reminders helps me stay accountable to actually reach out to people. And I find that people really appreciate it when you remember things that are meaningful to them and that are important to them. And so this has always helped me stay more on top of those small, but I think key moments of building trust with one another.
Fantastic example. And it's remembering those key details that goes such a long way. Tarana?
Yeah, I think building upon that, something that I've tried to do is if a employee comes with, a concern or, hey, I had a really hard conversation with someone, or hey, I'm not feeling great about the way this is going. I think, a lot of times people are nervous to kind of come to HR with those types of conversations because they don't know if they can trust, and to what extent they can have that trust. So I think, following up similarly with like personal things, but also following up with, after having those conversations, either if it's at the end of the day or the next day, kind of checking in to see, how they're feeling, if they've seen improvement, things like that, just to show that like you're still kind of thinking about them, beyond, and not just like, taking down the complaint just because you have to. Like it's something that you care about how they're, feeling after they have that conversation with you. So I think similar to that, but more in like the work, experience type situation.
Love that example. And last but not least, Irina.
Yes, hi. So we were at the business dinner together with one of our new managers, and one of my team members, she ate like a blueberries dessert, something like this, and she had really, really purple like lips and teeth. That was a bit like awkward, and like I texted her and said, hey, go to the bathroom and check yourself up. So, she really appreciated, like we laughed about it, but like really appreciated on a personal level that she didn't like embarrass herself in front of everyone with that. So, it's just a very simple example, but yeah.
Amazing. And we're getting some awesome points in the chat as well. Mary talks about what's currently giving you joy, asking those strength-based questions, as well as Trent's question, when are you happiest? So these questions, really understanding what each person requires and needs and what is meaningful to them goes such a long way. And I specifically think that as folks that work in HR and people ops, you have to care not just for your direct team maybe, but for the entire company. And that's asking a lot to care personally about literally everybody that you come across. So chapter 2, we go into this next topic. This is Kim's boss telling her, I can see I'm going to have to be really, really direct to get through to you. You're one of the smartest people I know, but saying so much makes you sound stupid. I included this quote because I think it's a great example of direct, challenging feedback that might be hard to hear in the moment, but essentially was escalated because Kim essentially wasn't paying attention or didn't really catch the first few attempts. And that manager did an excellent job of telling Kim exactly what she needed to hear in the way that she needed to hear it. So in this week's get introduced to that classic quadrant model that Kim Scott introduces: ruinous empathy, radical candor, manipulative insincerity, obnoxious aggression. I kind of want to just go through the definitions really fast. So speed round: ruinous empathy, caring a lot about being nice, not wanting to hurt people's feelings. Manipulative insincerity, worrying about your own ego. How am I going to look by giving this feedback? Do I actually want to say this? Do I actually care enough about this person to say this thing? Obnoxious aggression, the classic Steve Jobs, your work is shit, or you do shit work, which can be kind of harsh. And finally, radical candor, that sweet spot where you're able to challenge directly and be kind in the process. So as we're going, it's actually very interesting. We're not always perfect, giving perfect, radically candid feedback all the time. And oftentimes we kind of tend to swing around one of these 3 areas. So if you had to choose a quadrant, what quadrant do you think you would live in the most? And why do you think you kind of live in that quadrant? Nope. Yeah, Lauren.
Sure. So I definitely find myself falling within the rudeness empathy. I tend to find that I'm a pretty empathetic person. And again, depending on who you're talking to, you kind of have to adjust your candor and because everybody deals with response differently. And my biggest fear is upsetting somebody. So that's pretty much the bulk of time that I'm in that category.
Definitely. And yeah, that's definitely how I am as well. I definitely lean a lot towards that. Anybody else feel like they kind of hit a certain category? Yeah, Trent.
I'm right there with Lauren. I think I'm ruinous empathy, and maybe it's a trick of the trade that we care about people and we want them to succeed. And even when you read that quote a few slides ago, I knew it was probably the right thing to say, but I still wince a little bit and I get uncomfortable. It's hard. It is not easy to say those kind of things and be direct. And I know it's effective, but it's hard. And I'm still working on that with myself and my leaders.
Yeah, definitely. Tatiana?
One of the things that I find hard, and I would say that I also following Runa's empathy, I think with radical candor in people ops roles or just more people related functions, is that our work tends to be very ambiguous. And it's not as easy as like expectation met, yes, task done, yes. There's a lot more, I feel, ambiguity in a lot of that work. And clarity of expectations, or even, what career trajectories can look like. So many of those things are different from more strict career positions that have an upward swing. And I find that that's the piece that is difficult about challenge, because people's perspectives can be so different. They can approach things in such a different way. So I think that that's the hardest thing for me in challenging directly. The way I'm challenging you, is this true for you as it is true for me? And really understanding if we're on the same page there.
Yeah, it's so tough. And last but not least, Kat?
Hey, I manage a team of 7 people, and I find with my direct reports, I also tend to ruin his empathy, but I'm part of a management team of 4 people, and I find that I move towards obnoxious aggression in my peer group because I expect everyone, or I assume that everyone has the same context as me and understands very clearly what we're working towards and the urgency of it. And potentially that like drops the filter quite a lot and is not always the best approach. But I find that I oscillate depending on who I'm working with and what the relationship is.
Total sense. And it's super interesting point that like you can change how you approach it based on your audience, who you're speaking to, and maybe the context that they have. After doing a few sessions, I'll actually call out that I often don't hear folks identifying a lot with manipulative insincerity. Maybe trick of the trade, you don't want to kind of come off as somebody that doesn't care about people. I definitely think, though, that this should be called out, that this often sneaks up on us. We don't really recognize our ego until it's really in our face. And we might kind of reflect back on a piece of feedback and be like, wait, that had nothing to do with them, or I definitely did not kind of take into account what they actually needed. It was mostly in service of myself. And that can be a really hard, honest thing to admit to yourself. Chapter 3, for too many bosses, recognition means promotion, but in most cases, this is a big mistake. The key is to recognize their contribution in other ways. And so in this section, we have the kind of anecdotes, both the awesome kind of layout of performance and how to look at it, but also the superstar versus rock star reference, which as superstars, they're the folks that climb the corporate ladder as fast as possible. They want challenges. They want to completely revamp processes. They're definitely really invested in trying to grow as fast as possible. And rock stars that have a little bit more stable growth trajectory. They're some of the best kind of craftspeople, the best back-end engineers, the best kind of customer service professionals and stuff. These folks are folks that really want to be experts, teachers, mentors for other folks in their org. And so I want to ask, have you ever underestimated an employee's contributions because they weren't gunning for a promotion? And what happened, and did you ever regret it? Raising this a little bit more challenging question to the group. I can definitely start first and just say, I think this was one of the biggest kind of eye-opening aspects of the book for me, to realize that there are different types of growth, and that just because I work in a fast-paced startup environment, quote unquote, doesn't mean that promotion is what everybody wants or what they need out of their careers. I definitely have found myself maybe discounting the efforts of rock stars on the team and trying to figure out, like, realizing that they don't necessarily have the same growth definitions as myself has been really, really important. Kat, your team is all superstars, definitely. Do you think do you think there's a balance there? Do you think that you should have some rock stars, or is it kind of the environment that, yeah, okay. Why do you nod your head, actually?
So, sorry, just for more context, I work with quite a junior team. Most of my team members are graduates, and this is their first ever job. And so they're very ambitious. They want to prove themselves very quickly, and they want acknowledgement in the form of like promotion or, financial reward. And yeah, it's just about kind of managing their expectations, but still like affirming their growth. But I think a lot of them see the only way of being recognized for their contribution is to be promoted. So it's just about like understanding or learning that like growth looks different for different people as they enter the work world.
Yeah, and I think more specifically, even if they are gunning for promotion, realizing that the next step in their career might not be management. Maybe they're not kind of the person that's fit to be a manager. Maybe they're much more interested in going for like a higher level of the kind of individual contributor route. So all of those are valid. And we definitely need to create a lot of growth paths that account for these things. And finally,
And I
last
just
but
add something there, Yen. Sorry, I think it's
Yeah.
also like our responsibility or my responsibility to help them understand that. Like I think they only see that promotion as the only path ahead of them, and that's why they assume that's the path that they must follow.
Fantastic. I'm going to take Mary's question real quick, and then we'll hop to the next one. Go ahead, Mary.
Yeah, it's more of a comment, not a question. I was just going to say that as a people leader, figuring out, I think, there's a book called Growth Isn't Always Upward. And as a leader, if you haven't learned that lesson yourself, it's really hard to cultivate that with others on your team. So figuring out how to create growth opportunities that aren't upward is also a skill, right? And it requires time, attention, energy. And I think because of that, folks might opt for the easiest route, which is promotion.
Definitely. Great points there. And last but not least, chapter 4, I didn't say Steve is always right. I said he gets it right. Like anyone, he is wrong sometimes, but he insists, and not gently either, that people tell him when he's wrong. And that Steve, of course, is the late Steve Jobs, well known for his more so obnoxious, aggressive techniques when it came to feedback. But one thing Steve Jobs did really well was this get stuff done wheel. He's a great example of the kind of rock tumbler aspect, the need to hash out and debate ideas before they're solidified and then later executed on. So just looking at this get stuff done wheel really quick, we have listen, clarify, debate, decide, persuade, execute, and learn. If you had to kind of name one particular section of this wheel, are there any sections that are easiest for you or parts where you tend to skip? And where do you often find yourself getting stuck? Just going to put the wheel up there. Anybody want to call out? You can also write it into the comment section too. Definitely know everybody's probably been on a lot of meetings today. Yeah, Erin.
Yeah, so oftentimes I find myself getting stuck in the kind of debate section. Reason being, whether it's, I'm managing direct reports or kind of like managing more, horizontally with, the other, members of leadership. We are not we are all, but I think on my team specifically, there is a tendency to be stubborn, meaning a lot of us get stuck in our ideas and our plans well before like actually communicating them to, the rest of leadership, or even in that period of communicating them to leadership or to direct reports, we get stuck on the idea of not being flexible to incorporating new ideas into it because you can't understand how it fits in. So I think that's actually like a thing that I know I really struggle with. I spend hours coming up with these plans and then suddenly people are poking holes in it and it sucks. And so getting stuck in debate is definitely something that's happened to me pretty frequently.
Fantastic. And we're getting some awesome comments over here. Folks getting stuck in the learn or listen stage, also super, super valid and something that I know I struggle with. A lot of folks resonating with the debate section as well. Yeah, trying to figure out, I think these latter aspects, well, I guess it's a circle, so all of them, but the ways that they kind of tie in together, the way that we can continue to iterate on them, it's tough stuff. And it's part of the reason why management is so difficult. So the reason why I want to call out a lot of these things before we dive into our Radical Candor workshop, this book goes over so much more than just feedback, performance management, being able to actually execute on decisions. I definitely want to make sure that we emphasize those different aspects before we focus on the overall feedback part. So this next section of this book club is talking about Radical Candor, particularly different exercises that you'll do one-on-one with each other, where you go through two different scenarios, one for praise and one for criticism. So in that very first section, again, remembering all the different aspects and trying to go towards radical candor, we're going to be moving towards praise. And so imagine you have a junior teammate that took the initiative to fix a broken process. I've given this one example, but you can literally take it so long as person A is manager and person B is receiver, leader, report, however you want to kind of name it. In this example, you can be a sales manager, but if you want to just kind of take on your own role, you can. Just remember, A is manager, B is receiver. That fixed some sort of learning process. In a second, Monica's going to throw you into your breakout rooms with one person. You'll be with that same person for the majority of the workshop. So get to know each other, say hi, and start delivering praise. Specifically in the book, just remember praise is meant to be specific, clear, and kind. Provide examples. You can make it up. We'll see a lot of improv acting in these workshops, but we really try to be specific and give praise that seems to resonate with that person. And then switch when you're ready.
Screenshot this slide, everybody. So if you get lost, you have something to refer back to. I'm going to open all the rooms now. You will get a 60-second reminder, 60 seconds before it's time to leave the room. Good luck, fun.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi. Just by raising of hands, like how did that, or I guess I can't even see your faces, but like, was that a thumbs up, thumbs down? How'd that go?
Good. Sorry, I think I let you guys know that I was going to be late to this one. Been going back and forth to meetings double booked, but so yeah.
Amazing. Yeah, and feel free to dip whenever and stuff. The one-on-ones are not recorded. By the way, full transparency, one-on-ones, these groups are not recorded. You're safe. You can say whatever you want off the record and stuff. We're going to be cutting up the rest of it to have the kind of recording available to everybody, whoever wants to kind of watch that rest of it. So how was that show of thumbs? Was it good, bad, kind of awkward? Okay, I'm getting a lot of positive thumbs. That's great. This next scenario, same group that you'll be in and stuff, is a little bit harder, criticism. So that's what we've been talking about. A manager notices that their teammate is always late to meetings. Person A, you're the manager. Person B, you're the receiver. The receiver, you're a little bit more sleepy and stuff, and basically try to receive and also give feedback as needed. So we'll dive into the scenario. Again, screenshot it or write it out on a Post-it note if you forget who's who. And yeah, let's dive into this next little section. Amazing. Okay. Hello. Hopefully it wasn't too rude of an awakening and we didn't cut anybody off. How was that section and stuff? How'd we do? Thumbs and stuff? Okay, I'm getting a lot of thumbs up. So criticism, tough and a lot easier to do with a complete stranger who doesn't even have the actual role that we're role playing with than it is with people we know. But the more we practice, the easier it gets. And the more we ask for feedback, the easier that gets. And we can kind of normalize that process. So thank you all for participating in that little workshop with us. This next section is for you. It's an open manager leader roundtable for you to air any sort of problems at work, things that you're struggling with for the other experts and leaders in this group to potentially help you out and offer advice. This can be about the book. It can be completely off topic of the book. I do ask that you anonymize names just for the respect of the parties involved. And please remember those discussion rules that we had mentioned earlier about creating space for others and creating a safe space. So yeah, please, if anybody wants to go and maybe raise their hand first, I'll just take that as like the first question, and then whoever wants to unmute can respond in the chat, however works best for you. Yeah, Kat.
Hi. First off, the breakout sessions were really helpful. Mary Rodriguez, thank you so much for the helpful tips. In this situation that we're in right now, we've had an employee that's been with us for a few years, incredibly well liked across the organization and is very much a culture carrier, not only within the department, but just across teams. And so the situation is as we've grown our business, a lot of the work that we're doing right now has become more rapid in terms of the increase of responsibilities and tasks. And what we've realized is that this person hasn't really been able to train up to helping support the organization in their current role. And based on what we've evaluated, graduated, we need to level up this position, but that also means that the person that's currently in this role will no longer be able to be with us. It's very hard because it's the difficult conversation that we're planning to have, but they also don't take feedback very well. I think as soon as you provide any sort of feedback, whether big or small, whether, you know, if you're coming off as being incredibly kind and caring to their well-being, they shut down and, you know, close up as a clam. And so any, you know, suggestions or guidance, I think, from this group would be really helpful.
Yeah, Erin, go ahead.
Sure. So I've come across this situation a few times in my current role. And typically the way I try to position this conversation is really around like role alignment. And then also like, what does the company do? Like, is generally like there a career alignment there? That's one of the biggest things I try to think about, because it's a lot easier to part on terms of this doesn't seem like the fit that you're looking for, and I know it's the fit that we like. I know it's not a fit for us, and even then it's still such a difficult conversation. But like I think like while giving feedback, like I try not to add insult to injury in a termination call. So it's usually I try to take as much of the blame and put it back on myself, because, you know, I know the truth, and, you know, my teammates know the truth, but yeah, I don't know if that's helpful, but that's typically the way like I try to go about it. Like I hurt myself less if I'm taking the blame, and I'm hurting them less as well.
That's
Really?
helpful. Thank you, Erin.
Yeah, super thoughtful. And also, Kat, just to echo what Erin's been saying, it's a very, very tough situation. And thank you for sharing it with group. Tarana.
I think the other thing that makes conversations like this easier is like when it's less of a surprise, right? Like I know we talk like there, you know, there's advice of, you know, performance conversations or like performance reviews should never be a surprise, right? Like everything that you're discussing in the performance review should already have been discussed previously. It's super hard if it's someone who doesn't take feedback well, but I think like if I think the easiest way, and even if it hasn't been done for this person, but like moving forward, learnings from it would be like, you know, even though they don't take feedback well, has their manager been having frequent conversations with them to let them know that they're not up to the level that they need to be, or, you know, has the manager been trying to make attempts to get them up to that level, but they're aware that it's not really working. Like I think that's what makes it easier in the future, is like if everyone's kind of on the same page. I know obviously people who don't take feedback as well, it's hard to get them on the same page, but if you've been having those conversations a lot, then it's less of a surprise and it's less of like a hurt and a shock, than it is like, yeah, you're right, it's not working for me, it's not working for you guys, like it just makes sense to part. So even if it's not like done with this person, if it's too late or if it has been or whatever, I feel like that's what my biggest learnings have been moving forward. And now I'm always like, okay, managers, have you tried? Have you had these conversations? Is it documented? Do we know we've done all we can to prepare them for the time where we would have to lay them off, you know, or whatever it is before, you know, we get there?
Awesome stuff. Thank you. Tatiana?
So one thing that resonated with me in the book, Kat, about this type of situation is when Kim offers resources or introductions to other people that might be able to help them, recognizing the market is really hard right now and mass layoffs are happening across the board. I think especially at this moment, job insecurity is a very difficult topic for a lot of people. And so if there's any way in that conversation for you to provide resources or someone you could introduce them to or anything in that reality, I think that could be a great way to also make them understand the care deeply piece of, I think, this conversation and understand, you know, that while we are not a good match anymore, I'm sure you're going to be an incredible asset at other organizations. And these are some of the people that, you know, I could connect you to or whatever it is. So just wanted to call that out because I found that to be very significant in the book in these hard conversations too.
Really great answers, everybody. And I'm definitely learning a lot. Anybody? I think we have a time for one more kind of situation to be brought to the round table. Anybody want to offer one?
I actually have one as well.
Go for it.
Cool. We are actually about to go through a termination process that we have been contemplating for about 2.5, 3 months now, with one of our directors. Context there is, there's just been a general underperformance kind of across the board. And we've also seen a massive demotivation kind of within her team as well. A lot of the people are not performing the way they used to. A lot of them have slipped into being underperformers instead of being top performers like they used to be, which is a really big bummer. But on top of that, you know, about a month ago, she ended up having to take like a mental health leave for probably 2 or 3 weeks. And then, you know, she came back maybe a week or two ago, and now she has a lot of other personal things going on, a death in the family, and then a death of a child of one of her very close friends. But we have now delayed like this termination for a really long time, and it's meant to happen. And on a personal level, I am very much struggling because the empathy is like so strong for like what she's going through. So any advice there would be super, super helpful.
I just first want to say that it's such a tough situation. And even though we're a young startup, we did have a situation like that with which the person, their car broke down, somebody they love got sick. And like, while they were underperforming, but we kept on justifying like, okay, they have reason to be underperforming. There's so much stuff going on in their life right now. It didn't change the fact though, that it was actively hurting the business. And we also delayed the termination process for a good 2 to 3 months, which is really, really tough. By the time we ripped off the Band-Aid, the interesting thing was like this person wasn't surprised at all. They had known that they were underperforming. It was causing them stress as well. So I wonder if that kind of like not the kind of game of chicken of not really wanting to be the first person to say it or call it out is actively hurting both parties most likely. And so while the conversation is probably one of the most toughest ones to have, period, it's very necessary. And I think just naming it and calling it out probably adds some level of relief. And then all the kind of topics brought up in that last question. So Tatiana's point about offering resources and kind of like addressing the job insecurity aspect, I think would also be super helpful there. Yeah, Mary.
We have we are almost a very similar startup mode. We're in about 3 years in terms of being a formalized operating team. And we have a policy called graceful departure. So I actually was going to say 2 things. One, during these kind of term scenarios that we've talked about, I don't actually think I would ever recommend using this as an opportunity for feedback. Given that what we're talking about here is feedback. In the term scenario, you're way past the point of needing to give feedback, right? And so I wouldn't even put those 2 in the same conversation. But in terms of what graceful departure could look like, and this is actually a new experience because I'm relatively new to this team, we provide folks who are going to be offboarded an opportunity to take advantage of graceful departure. And what that does, it allows them to ramp down their responsibilities with us over the course of an 8-week period so that they can begin a job search. And as part of the policy, we offer to give a recommendation for the departing employee. And there's, various elements that make the offboarding civil. It also, one of the principles of graceful departure is transparency. And so in terms of offboarding projects, we start with kind of letting the team know so that folks can begin to offboard what they need in a as humane and civilized way as possible over the course of 8 weeks, sometimes 12 weeks. I'm not saying it's easy. I'm just saying it's a way that folks might think of, in these particular scenarios, how to make or how to lessen the blow when someone really is kind of losing their role with your organization, but also experiencing these kind of personal scenarios.
Such great points, and love your point about separating feedback from this kind of conversation. It's definitely two very different stages for an employee experience. Alexis, your hand has been raised and I completely missed it, so hopefully it hasn't been up for very long. But yeah, please share.
Yeah, no problem. It hasn't been up too long, and I'm not sure. Sorry if I missed it. I hope it's okay that I speak. I wasn't sure if it's reserved for like specific groups to share, or
Yeah, please just.
Oh, okay. Yeah. We had a similar situation with this about 2 years ago here, and it was really, it was sad. And it was also, like you say, it toys with your emotions because you want to be empathetic as an HR person, but at the same time, you have to represent the business. This person was about to be on a PIP, and then she took 12 weeks leave. And then when they came back, we had a really honest conversation of and just like other people had said, that they were aware that their performance was not doing well anyway, but we had this graceful conversation of, we're going to offer you this severance, or you can go on this PIP. However, after this 30-day PIP, if we don't see really big improvements, then unfortunately you're going to have to leave with no severance. And so a lot of times people choose the severance package. It gives them autonomy back and gives them a sense of, hey, I have control in this situation. And it's a really bummer situation, but I do have control now. And it provides them with some graceful exiting. They kind of say, okay, I'll leave in 4 weeks, take the severance package and leave gracefully without being, termed.
A really great point. Thank you so much. If we are good there, I think the next thing I'm going to do is just walk you through our Manager Book Club hub, all the excellent kind of freebies and kind of perks that you get by being in this club. I don't think I mentioned it earlier, but we had over 200 applicants to this particular session and such, and we essentially only were able to admit 100. So you're in our specialized kind of HR People Ops Leaders group, and you can get a lot of really interesting perks from that. So we've designed the special Radical Candor Manager Book Club hub for you to kind of guide your reading schedules, different types of chapter guides. Part 2 will be unlocked literally right after this session, but you also have access to some other awesome things. So earlier I mentioned that club member directory, everybody's LinkedIn's and also profiles based off of the application process are included here. So feel free to connect with other folks if you really resonated with a particular person. Feel free to let them know that and build these connections way past this little session that we have going on here. If you have any questions about what you should be doing for the next session, how you can meet Kim Scott and also chat with Kim Scott, you'll want to ask Kim Scott a question and submit your question. If selected, you'll be able to be the person that unmutes and literally talks to Kim Scott, which is crazy. And so that'll be amazing. And then as well, please check out our member discounts library for any sort of discounts. Kim Scott's team gave us free video books. So let's just say you don't have time to read the rest of the book. It's going to be really crazy for the rest of April. Download this video book. It'll go through all the top kind of things. And it's, I think, $30, which is awesome. If you have any other deals, submit the discount there, but we can also give you 15% off of Kona. Again, we're the manager, co-pilot, and employee well-being tool with Mental Health Awareness Month coming up. Definitely something to consider. So that's kind of major call outs. And finally, this is recorded, as well as other events are going to be recorded. If somehow you can't make it to the 26th event, you can check out for the recording there. We'll also email it to you. But please check out this hub, essentially use it. It's a resource for you. And thank you so much for participating in Book Club. It's been a joy to have you and also to have so many amazing conversations and learnings being shared here. And yeah, feel free to not be a stranger. Reach out, email me, and yeah, let's keep the conversation going. Also check your email for an email from me about kind of feedback on the session. We really want to make sure that we learn from this. This was one of our first sessions ever, if you can believe it. So a lot to improve, a lot of space to grow, but thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy morning and super excited to see you at the next one.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.